A while back, I made a video where I basically took the DCEU and restructured it into the more complete MCU structure, just to see what it would look like, and that video did pretty well, and one of the top comments that I got most frequently is comments asking for what Phase 4 would look like. Now, in the MCU, Phase 4 has only just begun. We had a lot of things in the year 2021, but that's the only year that so far we've gotten anything from this phase. I don't know how long this phase will last. I'm assuming it'll just be 2021, 2022, and 2023. But basically, I don't really know what the phase, like when it will last, when it will end. So in this video, I will be going over basically all the movies and TV shows that have either come out or have been confirmed to be coming out in the next 2 or 3 years. There are a couple things that are basically like in talks to come out, and like it's not confirmed, it's in development. Those things I will not be talking about. Plus things that will be coming out in like 2 years from now that we have like no details about yet. I won't be going into detail in this video, like what the counterparts would be about, because I don't really know what those movies are going to be about. But the ones that have already come out, or the ones that are going to come out really soon, I will go into detail on what the counterparts will be. I will also be considering like 100% the canon of the last video. There are things in retrospect that I would change, but just for the sake of consistency between the two videos, I'll be going off of basically everything that I established in that one. I also made a video where I restructured the MCU into the DCEU structure, which a lot of people thought was really funny, so if you want to check that out and you haven't already, link will be in the description down below and in the top right corner of the video. With that in mind, let's just get into it already, starting with the first MCU project and the first TV show in this entire thing, WandaVision and its counterpart, a Martian Manhunter TV show. Now, it was a bit difficult coming up with a counterpart for WandaVision because there isn't really a character in the DC Universe who is at all similar to the Scarlet Witch, nor are there a pair of superheroes with the same dynamic as the Scarlet Witch and Vision. This show is also very unique in its concept in this fake TV reality where Wanda is altering reality, bringing her dead boyfriend back to life. It's things that are very unique to the character and to the world. Plus, it would probably have to be a character who debuted in the Age of Ultron counterparts, which are like Hawkman, Hawkgirl, and Martian Manhunter. And while I could have made a Hawkman and Hawkgirl TV show, but I decided to go with Martian Manhunter because I think he's a more interesting character, and I think he's more similar to the Scarlet Witch, first of all in his power level and power set, and in his grief with the destruction of Mars or the genocide of the Martians, if that is the story arc that they're going with, because they don't always do that. But I think that if you look at the Martian Manhunter in Justice League Unlimited, he's a very lonely person, he has a lot of grief, and that's very similar to the Scarlet Witch. Plus, his power set is, I think, high enough that he can affect others. I think a cool storyline is that if you took the inspiration from the Superman comic for the Man Who Has Everything, where John Jones is put under the influence of a Black Mercy, where he's put into this false reality where he's on Mars and he doesn't remember anything about the genocide or the Justice League. And maybe that begins to affect people around him because of his mental abilities. And in the end, maybe it's revealed that he did this on purpose. He put himself under the influence of Black Mercy, which I think is a bit drastic, but also it's very similar to WandaVision, where she basically did all of it on purpose. And in the end, she kind of was the villain. I think it'd be pretty cool if Martian Manhunter, in his grief, became a bit of a villain, much how Scarlet Witch did in WandaVision. So that's the main reason I went with Martian Manhunter, and I think that it is the character who fits this the best. The next project is Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and based off of the established canon, it's obvious that this would be a like Batman or Robin and Red Hood TV show with Tim Drake and Jason Todd as the main characters. I guess the title would be Robin and Red Hood, which is not exactly a title that rolls off the tongue, but I think calling it Batman and Red Hood would be a bit misleading because this wouldn't really be a Batman and Red Hood TV show. Tim would only become Batman near the end. It would be very similar to how Sam becomes Captain America. Instead of like being offered the role at the end of Endgame or the Endgame counterpart, he's offered the role at the end of the Nightwing Battle of the Cowl movie, which was the last movie in the last video, where he decides that he's going to become Batman, and basically everyone agrees to it. In this TV show, however, he's still Robin, and he's still grappling with the fact that he's taking over, but by the end he does, and he teams up with Jason throughout the season. Much like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Winter Soldier's counterpart, Red Hood, would be like the second main character, not the main character, but he would have an arc and a significant amount of screen time, and I think that his arc would be based off of the Urban Legends Cheers story, where Batman and Jason Todd teamed up to take down a drug called Cheer Drops, off the streets of Gotham, a drug that is like basically the opposite of Scarecrow's fear gas. It makes people happy, and it also kills them in the end. It's a pretty good storyline between Batman and Red Hood. It's a pretty great Red Hood storyline as well, with Mr. Freeze as one of the main villains, which could easily be included here. But I think it would be pretty cool for a Batman and Red Hood TV show in the vein of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The next TV show is Loki, which was pretty difficult to come up with a counterpart for. The Loki TV show did a lot of things. First of all, Loki as a character was the main villain of Thor, the main villain of Justice League, and now the main character of this show. I'm pretty sure in this, my whole structure here, all three of those characters are different. The main villain of Thor and the main villain of Justice League are not the same person, and the main character here will not be the same person as those two either. Because Loki, he was used a lot, but I don't think there's really a DC character that fits all of those roles. Here, I didn't really go for the multiverse route. I don't think DC needs to do this whole storyline where they open up the multiverse. They could just have a bunch of TV shows and movies that just explore aspects of the multiverse to just show us that it's there, and maybe even introduce us to characters who we gain a bit of a liking to, so that when there's this big event, which obviously will be Crisis on Infinite Earths, it lands all the more. So the Loki counterpart will just be a TV show about a villain, and because there is a movie about a villain in this universe coming out soon, I decided to just go with that. So the Loki counterpart will be Black Adam, and the TV show could basically be the same thing as the movie, but just like more. It could just be, I don't really know what the movie is 100% going to be about because I haven't seen it yet, and we haven't really seen much of it, but you know, Black Adam is the main character. He also like faces off against the Justice Society of America. There are more episodes, there's more screen time, so maybe they could introduce even more members of the JSA than they would otherwise. And, you know, if you really want this to connect to the multiverse, because this does include the JSA, you could say that this does take place on Earth 2, and every appearance going forward of Black Adam is just the Earth 2 version of the character. Maybe like on Earth 2, he's the champion of Shazam, and on the regular Earth, Earth 1 or Earth Prime or whatever it is, he's dead. You know, I don't really know how you could connect it to the multiverse other than that. But I don't really think that's 100% necessary. We will be getting to the multiverse pretty soon. The next project is Black Widow, the first movie in this phase, and if you thought a Black Widow movie was a long time coming in the real world, in this weird alternate reality where the DCEU was structured like the MCU and was more successful, the Flash movie was something that it's crazy that they haven't gotten to till now. The Flash was a huge player in the first saga, but he never had his own movie. Founding member, he sacrificed his life to save the whole universe. He was basically the main character in the Endgame counterpart Final Crisis, and he died, but is now getting his own movie, much like how Black Widow got her own movie after she died. The difference here is that this won't be taking place like during the Civil War era, it will be taking place current day, and just like how Black Widow gave the Black Widow role to Yelena, in this movie, Wally West will be taking over the role from Barry as the Flash. There will be a couple flashbacks that show that Wally West existed for a brief period of time right before the Final Crisis as like Kid Flash for a while, and this is a couple years later, so he is a bit older and now is taking over the role of the Flash. And much like the comics, a lot of it will focus on his mental block, not being able to take up his mentor's mantle or getting anywhere close to his speed or accomplishments. I think I could also take from one of the best Wally West Flash stories, which is The Return of Barry Allen, which I won't spoil if you don't know what it's about, but if you do, then you know who the main villain will be. Also, it is a Flash movie, and this is the multiverse saga, so you could definitely like sprinkle the multiverse in there a bit, but it won't be a multiverse-centric movie because I don't think the first Flash movie should be a multiverse-centric movie. There isn't also just any room, as there's a whole thing about the return of Barry Allen and Wally taking over the role of the Flash. There isn't a lot of room for the multiverse, but you could sprinkle it in there just to appease fans and appease the fact that this saga is just beginning. That brings us to What If Season 1, which is a very interesting thing to go over here because it's an anthology series about the multiverse, which is different for DC. For Marvel, they have a line of comics called What If, where they take an established story and flip it on its head, ask what if this happened instead. DC doesn't directly do that. They have the Elseworlds and just like the regular multiverse, where they have alternate versions of the DC universe, not necessarily because of something different happening, but just because like maybe characters exist in a different time period, or they exist in a different country. There are obviously stories where things happen differently, and that's why the universe is different. But for the most part, the Elseworlds comics and also the movies that are based off of them, like the animated ones, are just alternate versions of the DC universe. This season will also have 9 episodes, and the last 2 will like be a 2-parter, with the main villain being Superboy Prime, just because he's a multiverse level villain who I don't see them using ever in an actual movie, so why not use him here? The 9 episodes I go with, which are all based off of real DC Elseworlds or multiverse stories, are, first of all, there's Batman Gotham by Gaslight, which is like Batman in steampunk 1800s in London. Basically, the entire world of Gotham is just placed there and then instead. Then there's Justice League The Nail, which is basically just like a Justice League without Superman, what that would look like, the world and the superhero landscape without Superman. Then there's Kingdom Come, which I don't think I have to explain. Deceased, which is basically like the Marvel Zombies of the DC Universe, and they did zombies there, so I did it here as well. Superman Red Sun, which is just Superman in Russia. Wonder Woman Injustice, which Injustice is a very interesting universe. I chose to go with Wonder Woman in the first season. We could definitely see more of Injustice later, but for now, I think Wonder Woman's story is the most interesting the actual Injustice events, because she's basically the only character who is different before those events, and in a very interesting way. Then there's Batman in Darkest Night, which is basically just like Batman becoming a Green Lantern, maybe a bit of an evil Green Lantern like the Dawnbreaker from the Dark Multiverse, but it could be somewhere in the middle over there. Then the penultimate episode is The Adventures of Superboy, which is basically the origin story and then rise and fall of Superboy Prime. Finally, Crisis on Earth Prime, which a bunch of characters come together, all the heroes that we've seen so far come together, or at least the main ones, to fight Superboy Prime. And obviously, the Monitor is in every single one of these episodes, the counterpart to the Watcher. The next project is the second movie, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, which, honestly, I just picked another movie that I think is a bit similar, just in the fact that it exists, and it's about a character that isn't really that well known, but is getting a movie anyway. I just made the counterpart to Shang-Chi, the Blue Beetle movie that's coming out, I think next year, 2023, because it exists, and for the most part, I want to include all the movies that actually do exist into the structure somewhere, and I think that putting it with Shang-Chi definitely fits. The story of this movie would just be the standard origin story for Jaime Reyes, which we mainly see in Young Justice Season 2, or we do see like in flashbacks or being mentioned. A lot of what this movie is based off of could be based off of the same things that Season 2 of Young Justice is, because that's kind of fantastic, and Blue Beetle was like kind of the main character there, and he was great, so just do that. The next movie is Eternals, with the counterpart being a New Gods movie, something that was going to happen but then was cancelled, maybe for the better because it was being made by the same person who made Naomi, and looking at the ratings on IMDb, plus I did watch the first episode, it's not very good. Anyway, the counterpart to Eternals is New Gods, which I think is fitting because it's like a group of these godly characters, and they're also affiliated with Darkseid, while the Eternals, at least in the comics, are definitely affiliated with Thanos. The story here would be that Darkseid is now dead after the events of Final Crisis, and Apocalypse is in a civil war. It's in chaos. There's like a civil war between Calabac and Granny Goodness, and maybe you could also include Grail, the daughter of Darkseid, could definitely also be included here, and basically Mr. Miracle, Big Barda, and Orion are the main 3 characters, while also the Forever people like Mark, Moonrider, Beautiful Dreamer, Big Bear, Seraphim, Vicken are included here as well. It's a big cast of characters, but it does focus on mainly the main 3, Mr. Miracle, Big Barda, and Orion. And Mr. Miracle and Orion are definitely the ones that connect to the main storyline the most, because there's the reveal of their true heritage, that they were replaced in some sort of peace treaty, something that was also kept secret for the most part. And Orion is actually the son of Darkseid. In the end, he also takes over the role of the ruler of Apocalypse, in a cool twist, much like how, spoiler alert, Icarus ended up being a villain in Eternals. Orion could be a bit of a villain here. He is a bit of an asshole in the comics, and I think that the fact that he's the son of Darkseid, the eldest son of Darkseid, and revealing that in a twist before he takes over the role of the ruler of Apocalypse could have been really cool to see. The next project is Hawkeye, and we're finally getting to the final founding member of the Justice League, which is Cyborg. Cyborg is a very different character from Hawkeye, so the shows would be different. Hawkeye TV show focused a lot on Hawkeye's legacy and new Hawkeye taking over. Cyborg literally doesn't have a single person to fill in that role. There's no other Cyborg. He's never had any sidekicks. For the most part, he's been of sidekick age, so it makes sense that he's never had one. But I do think that having a TV show at all it's cool. I think they could include Beast Boy maybe. Instead of having a sidekick, he could have a new best friend. After it was established kind of in the Snyderverse that he and Barry would have been best friends. So he's grieving Barry's death and he becomes best friends now with a new hero, Beast Boy. And maybe Wally West could be included as well because Yelena was included in the Hawkeye TV show. And like it or not, Yelena and Wally are basically counterparts in these videos. The Grid would probably be the main villain, and basically that's all I have to say about that. The Cyborg TV show could be pretty cool. That brings us to Spider-Man No Way Home, which is a movie that's basically impossible to make an actual good counterpart to in this universe, as I would definitely have to change some things. They made it really hard to make a counterpart to because other than Spider-Man, Batman's probably the only character in the entirety of pop culture who could pull it off as well, and even then it wouldn't be as good. And the problem here is that Nightwing is the counterpart to Spider-Man, which is not a character exactly known for his cinematic appearances, and Batman in this universe being the counterpart to Iron Man, he's dead. The way around this is that it is a Nightwing movie, where he basically goes around the multiverse, he meets up with a bunch of other Batmen, and there is a reason for that too. Basically, what I'm doing here is that I'm making the main villain of this movie Batmite. Batmite is a character who's a fifth dimensional imp. He's basically a god. He has like unlimited power, and he's also obsessed with Batman. In this universe, there is no Batman. There's Tim Drake, and maybe Batmite's not really a fan of Tim Drake. He wanted Dick Grayson to take over the role. So in this movie, he's trying to convince Dick Grayson to take over the role of Batman instead of Tim Drake. And he's taking it from universe to universe in order to convince him to do so. He teams up with an alternate universe version of Ben Affleck's Batman, which is the one that's the most emotional for him. Maybe that's the last one because it's the most emotional because he looks like his own mentor and slash father. We also see Michael Keaton's Batman, Christian Bale's Batman. I would say Robert Pattinson's Batman, but I think that if the DCEU was as successful as the MCU, Robert Pattinson's Batman probably would have never existed in the first place. So it's Michael Keaton, Ben Affleck, and Christian Bale. Plus, we see a lot of villains. In the end, basically, Batmite sets up this fight between all like the villains of those universes that they could potentially get for this movie to fight the three Batmen and Nightwing. Now, I'll admit, this is a very kooky story. It's something that you'd probably expect to see in Batman the Brave and the Bold, especially with Batmite being included, but this was really the only way I could see them pulling this off at all, and I think that if they sprinkle in a bit of emotion there, and they sprinkle in the arc for Nightwing, which is getting further out of the shadow of Batman, which is basically the title of this movie, Nightwing Shadow of the Bat, which in my opinion sounds pretty awesome. I think that it could end up being a good movie in a world that it does exist, and it certainly would make a shit ton of money, like Spider-Man No Way Home did, even if it comes out during a pandemic, which, I mean, it comes out in 2021 in this universe, which already passed. That brings us to Moon Knight, which is the first thing that actually hasn't come out yet. It's coming out in a couple of weeks from now, and the counterpart will be Peacemaker. There isn't really a huge reason for this, as the two characters I don't think have that much in common, but it's a TV show that does exist. The two shows actually came out very close to each other, just 2 months apart, and like I said, I want to include as many things that do exist as possible. The Moon Knight doesn't really have a clear counterpart in the DC universe. I mean, people compare him to Batman, but obviously I'm not doing that. So I think Peacemaker fits here better than probably anywhere else. That brings us to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is a pretty big one. It was kind of, again, impossible to make a true adaptation of this, like a counterpart to this, because Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness will be a truly insane and huge movie, which basically brings together all of the alternate universes that Marvel has ever had. Marvel was a very unique predicament, not owning the rights to Spider-Man or the X-Men or their Fantastic Four. I didn't really do anything with that here. I didn't make it so that the DCU doesn't have the rights to their characters, because the Justice League for the DCU were always their biggest characters, and while Marvel, it wasn't always the Avengers. So I don't think it would be the Justice League that they sell, and if they do, then the universe just wouldn't work at all. Anyway, this movie would be very different, just because I can't really make it the same, or this multiversal crossover, including all these cameos from these other alternate universes, because the main character here is Shazam. He's not Doctor Strange, he's not the Flash, he's Shazam, and I can't change that. Like I said, I'm going off the exact same continuity as the last video, which means that because the counterpart to Doctor Strange was Shazam, the counterpart here has to be Shazam too. And while it doesn't have to be exactly like what the Shazam Fury of the Gods movie is going to be this year, recently confirmed to be coming out only a couple months after the real-life Black Adam movie, insane that that's actually happening and they're not appearing in a movie together. But I think we could change that. If you remember, I made the Black Adam movie take place on Earth 2. The JSA were there, so that I think that worked. And I was a bit doubtful about that, but I am sticking to my guns because this works very well. Black Adam, that killed one bird of basically making the Loki counterpart also related to the multiverse, because it takes place on an alternate universe. Then we have a second bird to kill with this one stone of Black Adam and Shazam coming out 2 months apart but not meeting up and not fighting. So we'll make that happen here. They will fight in this movie, which kills a third bird with that single stone of making this movie also related to the multiverse. Basically, in this movie, Shazam, along with the help of the Flash, goes to Earth 2, teams up with the JSA as well, and fights the champion of Shazam in that universe, the Black Adam, who is not a character who maybe exists on the regular universe, because how could you have two champions of Shazam in one universe? That's the logic they would go with in this world, in this continuity. So the Loki Counterpart is a multiverse related movie. Black Adam and Shazam do fight in this movie, and the Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness also is multiverse related. I think I'd call this movie Shazam Crisis on Earth 2, or maybe just Shazam versus Black Adam, something like that, and move on. So from here on out, I'm basically going to be going lightning round. The video is already very long, and all the things that are coming out from here on out are things that we don't really know enough about to make a true counterpart for, but I'll say what I think that it will be, like what I think the counterpart should be, if it ends up being what I think it is. Anyway, the first thing is the She-Hulk TV show. Now, the Hulk in this universe, the counterpart is Aquaman, because the Incredible Hulk's counterpart movie was the Aquaman movie. Ever since then, we've gotten no Aquaman content in his own solo things, much like the Hulk in the MCU. We're finally getting a She-Hulk TV show, and that means that this TV show would have to be an Aquaman-affiliated character, and I think the Aquaman-affiliated character who deserves his own TV show the most is Aqualad. The next movie is Thor: Love and Thunder, which is coming out pretty soon, and it's crazy we haven't gotten a trailer yet or an official poster. We do know that Gore the God Butcher will be the main villain, and that Jane Foster will return, and she will be getting powers like she had on the comics, becoming a new version of Thor. I do think that they could do something similar here, not bring back Steve Trevor or something like that, but they could just introduce a new version of Wonder Woman that could either replace her in the future, or maybe like set that up, or it could just be a new version of Wonder Girl, that being either Cassandra Sandsmark or Yara Flor. Honestly, I think Yara Flor is a bit more of an interesting character, so I would go with that, introducing a new version of Wonder Girl in this movie. So then there's Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, which is basically going to be a Black Panther movie without T'Challa, because Chadwick Boseman did sadly pass away. I don't love the idea of what they're doing here. I think that while Chadwick was obviously great in the role, I don't think he would have wanted the character to die along with him. I think they should recast the character so that they can include him still, because Black Panther's story has not ended yet. That being said, because he isn't included in that Black Panther movie, then his counterpart in this universe, which is Jon Stewart's Green Lantern, can't be included either until he comes back, meaning now Hal Jordan is the main character, which I'm not a fan of. Jon Stewart is my favorite Green Lantern, and much like I'm not a fan of them not including T'Challa anymore, I'm not a fan of them not including Jon Stewart here either. And anyway, then there's the Ms. Marvel TV show, which I will make a Batgirl TV show, mainly because Captain Marvel's counterpart was Birds of Prey with like Barbara included in there. So I think making Ms. Marvel Batgirl, it does work. Which Batgirl is a different question, and it's not Barbara Gordon because she's been around for a while already in this universe and she's already Oracle. Instead, this will be the Cassandra Cain version of Batgirl, which is probably the most interesting one in terms of her role as Batgirl. Lady Shiva and David Cain, especially David Cain, would be the main villains, and Oracle would be included as well. I think it'd be pretty cool. So after that is the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, and I had a bit of a funny idea for that. The counterpart would obviously be a Suicide Squad Christmas Holiday Special, whatever you want to call it. And the idea is that basically all the members of the Suicide Squad that are already established, and we know of them, they're familiar faces, and they survived, they're now out of prison because Amanda Waller fulfilled her promise of, you know, you survive the mission and you do this, then you could get your sentence reduced. They all got their sentence reduced, especially in the final crisis, to nothing, and they're all out. But then in this holiday special, they get into hijinks that basically gets all of them arrested again. Probably it would be even better if they did it all together. They meet up somehow, they get into some sort of hijinks that gets them landed back in prison. They need to reduce their sentences one more time to get out again, and they do that in the final Suicide Squad movie, the Suicide Squad Volume 3, which is also the final Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I just think this is a funny way to bridge the gap and bring all the familiar faces back for the Suicide Squad 3. So then there's the Marvels, the sequel to the Captain Marvel movie with its counterpart being Birds of Prey. This won't be a second Birds of Prey movie because I think the Birds of Prey basically all went their separate ways. Black Canary was, however, the main character of that movie, and Green Arrow was included as well, so I think that instead we could just make this a Green Arrow and Black Canary movie, which is something that I would love to see in real life. Green Arrow has had a very small role in this universe so far, but at least he's getting something here alongside Black Canary as well. This could have easily been like a 3 Batgirls movie because it is like a 3 Captain Marvels movie, but I think we've had enough of the Bat family in this universe like taking up media, which, you know, is accurate to the comics, but not something I would like to see any more of. Then there's the Secret Invasion TV show, and I didn't really know what to do here because, I mean, it's a very specific storyline that involves a very specific race of aliens that DC kind of couldn't do. They have their own storyline called Invasion, which is, you guessed it, an alien invasion, and, you know, you probably know about it already because of the Arrowverse crossover, so I decided that I think it'd be a cool idea that instead of Secret Invasion here, we have Invasion, which basically is the Arrowverse crossover here. The Dominators come to Earth, they come to destroy all the metahumans. The Justice League is currently off-world, and now Earth is defended mostly by a ragtag group of B-list superheroes, with a couple A-listers sprinkled in there. Green Arrow, Black Canary, Vibe, The Flash, Supergirl, Citizen Steel, Vixen, the Atom, Firestorm, and also the Rogues help out a bit, all fighting the Dominators, which is a huge nod to the Invasion crossover in the Arrowverse that, you know, I felt like including. Then there's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is obviously Suicide Squad Volume 3. I have no idea what this movie will be about, so obviously I have no idea what its counterpart will be about, other than the fact that it's the end to the Suicide Squad trilogy. Then there's Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. The counterpart will be the Atom's third movie, also the end to this trilogy, and it will be called The Atom Armageddon. It will deal with like something similar to the Armageddon storyline from the comic. Like somebody comes back from the future to the past, a warning of a hero becoming a villain and taking over the world, and maybe he suspects the Atom, because that movie, The Ant-Man and the Wasp, will deal with Kang. I think it would be cool if they do something similar where they have this future tyrant, basically, who is also affecting the past. So this is where the lightning round begins, but from here on out, we don't really know anything about the movies or TV shows that are coming out, other than just the comic book characters or groups that they're named after. So let's start with the new Fantastic Four movie, with its counterpart, a Doom Patrol movie. Then there's a Blade movie, its counterpart will be Constantine. There's Deadpool 3, with its counterpart being Animal Man, just because he breaks the fourth wall. Captain America 4 will be Batman 4, which will be called Batman and Robin, dealing with Tim Drake as Batman, and Damian Wayne in being introduced as Robin. Shang-Chi 2 is Blue Beetle 2. Ironheart is a Steel TV show, Steel being the John Henry Iron Steel, and then Armor Wars, just because War Machine and Supergirl have been counterparts up until now, this will be a Supergirl TV show. Then there's the Wakanda show, which I don't know what it's going to be about, but it's a part of the Wakanda world, meaning it's a part of the Green Lantern world in this universe. So it's a Green Lanterns TV show about Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz. There's Echo, which the most similar character is Huntress, so let's go with that. Plus, this will be a spin-off from something, much like Echo was a spin-off from Hawkeye. There's nothing really to spin off from Cyborg, except for maybe Beast Boy, but he's going to be in something else. So this will be Huntress, a spin-off from the Birds of Prey movie that we saw a while back. There's an Agatha TV show coming out, which I'm not going to connect to Martian Manhunter because there isn't really any good villains that are going to appear there and that are going to have a spin-off. So this will be a similar character power set wise, and that's the Enchantress. Then there's Spider-Man Freshman Year, which fits pretty perfectly for a prequel to the Nightwing story, where his first year as Robin before he became Nightwing, which he already was by the time this cinematic universe started. Then there's Marvel Zombies, which is maybe a continuation of the episode from What If, maybe not. Regardless, this will be another deceased entry, and again, maybe a continuation of the Elseworlds episode, maybe not. Then there's going to be a Disney Plus special on Halloween, maybe this Halloween, so it's probably going to come out earlier than a lot of things I already went over. It's Werewolf by Night, which is probably, I think, going to be like this 1 hour special, like a single episode of a TV show dedicated to Werewolf by Night, and instead of him, I'm going with Blue Devil because I wanted to, and he's like also horror related, kind of. He's the devil. On Swamp Thing, he was a scary character, so I'm going with him. Followed by that is a TV show called I Am Groot, which might be like a kids show. It might not be canon, but if we're going with the Guardians of the Galaxy spinoff, and which means a Suicide Squad spinoff, I think the character who deserves it the most, who is the most like Groot, is King Shark, and the show will be called King Shark is a Shark. And finally, we have the introduction of the X-Men in this universe. The counterpart to the X-Men that I'm going to be, going forward in this universe, going to be considering is the Justice Society of America. Now, the JSA have already been included in this universe, but that kind of works because if you watch the trailer for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, you'll see that there is at least one X-Man in that movie, and that's Professor X. So maybe there will be more. I do think that is valid to introduce the JSA before their own movie, and also they do take place. This movie does take place on Earth 2. And finally is a movie that hasn't actually been confirmed yet, and that's a Young Avengers movie. It's just something that they've been setting up. I wanted to include it because that gives me an excuse to finally include the Teen Titans in this universe, a team that has been sorely missing. The roster will be basically every teenage hero that I could bring together. It is a mishmash of different types of Teen Titans, or different eras of Teen Titans rather. First of all, there's Raven, Beast Boy, and Starfire. I'm not including Cyborg or Nightwing because they are much older. Then there's Impulse and Superboy from Young Justice. There's also Red Arrow, Aqualad, and the Damian Wayne Robin. All three of them have been members of the Teen Titans recently on Damian Wayne's team. So like I said, a mishmash of different Teen Titan eras, and I think it works. But that's it. That's the final movie I'm going over here. It's a very, very long video, so make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed. And if you want more things like this, sign up to my Patreon as well. You will get to see something like this early, and just generally support me. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. But also, obviously, thanks a lot to my patrons who do support me, and goodbye.